Did you enjoy the session last night?
Yeah, it was very nice.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's very nice. Very, very lovely guy. It's I feel it's very quite informative, and the emphasis of the heart, I think, is really, really. That's something I've been reflecting a lot as well.
Yeah.
And actually, this video that I'm thinking about, like making, is going to be something along the line of the path of the heart.
Yeah.
And I think really that's important. Which actually leads to my first question, that perhaps that many of us out there in the world probably grow up with too much programming.
Absolutely.
Or it could be at the same time it's a trick of the ego or the mind, that we believe that our heart is not open enough. Our heart is quite closed or steered. Do you have any comment or any advice on how to open our heart to the world, Dr. Joe?
Yeah, I think it's a gradual process that the world is. I mean, I've studied yoga philosophy a long time.
Yes.
And in yoga, what they feel is that over eons of time, there are great big cycles that take place. And we're just coming out of what's called the Kali Yuga now,
Right.
which is an age of destruction and immorality and disease and egocentricity, all these things, you know. So it's almost like being predicted and prophesied because the ancients understood cycles of change. So I do feel that at the moment we're emerging, people like ourselves who are maybe a little bit ahead, right? Not special or anything, just sort of a little bit ahead because we've been quite sensitive. So we can pick up the change in frequency and vibration a bit before most of the population, right? So I think that, how do we know? Well, my thing is that out of the head into the heart. And when I say open the heart, it's more of a feeling than anything else. It's very difficult to explain unless you actually feel it yourself. So it's a change in energy and it's a change in frequency that goes on. Right. So how do you know when your heart's closed? Because you feel unhappy. You don't feel like there's any joy. You can feel anxious. You can feel sad. You can feel depressed. You can feel stressed. All those things are an indication that there's no joy flowing from your heart, you know. And I follow the work of Mantak Chia. I don't know whether you're familiar with Mantak Chia and the fusion of the 5 elements, but one of his main teachings is to try and cultivate an inner smile, you know, because lots of us pretend to be happy when we're desperate. I don't know whether that's answered your question at all, but I got to such a state, as you know, where I was so unhappy, right, and so miserable, but always trying to do the right thing, right? But in the end, everything seemed hopeless to me. And I think it's almost as if mankind, and womankind, of course, right. You know, don't want to cause any trouble, you know. True, okay, I think let's say mankind incorporating woman as well, you know. Okay, totally. I think that we've all got to go through some sort of period of deep reflection. Where we realize that maybe we're not as happy as we could be, you know, and that's to me what's called a rock bottom. We come to a point when we think something's got to change, right. And what we tend to do is we try and change external things to make our internal processes happy, and I think that we need to go exactly the other way around. We need to change our internal processing in order to create a better world. That was a long story for a simple question, wasn't it?
I mean, it's really great.
Right.
And one specific thing you mentioned, that a lot of us, we're trying to change the external versus changing internal. And I've been talking to a lot of friends these days as well, that a relationship is such a huge part of our lives, right? And we spend a lot of time interacting with people, whether it's at work or with our loved ones or with our family, right? And perhaps family and friends are more close with us, right? And work relationships could be also quite close because we spend a lot of time. However, there are some quotes where some yogi has said in the past that essentially means that don't mingle with worldly people, right? For example, what would someone do if, for example, someone at work ran into somebody who is very worldly, the heart is not open, and perhaps even a little bit controlling. Do you have any specific idea, specific take on that when it comes to the path of the heart?
Absolutely. I think as the path of the heart and the way of the dragon, right?
Yes.
As those two things sort of start to work,
Yes.
and metaphorically, our own hearts open up, right?
Yes.
We can spend more time with supposed negative or people, because in the end, that's still a judgment, isn't it?
Right.
It's still a judgment. So really, if we focus on maintaining our emotional calm and clear-mindedness, then we can be around anybody, really.
Right.
Because if the heart is actually providing us with the energy and the unconditional love that we talk about, then there's no judgment, so we can actually be anywhere. However, having said that, and to be cautious about it, because we're all learning day at a time, I only ever feel like I'm only scratching the surface of what's possible, really. But as we start to become more and more free and less judgmental, we get more and more ability to tolerate being around negativity or so-called worldly behaviors and stuff like that.
Right.
Because I sort of see that, being in the middle of that, it's almost when your heart's open, it radiates positive energy out and helps to change people's minds.
Right.
Because it's unusual in this day and age when there's so much stress about, it's unusual to see people laughing and joking unless they've had loads of drink or drugs or something like that. So without anything at all, to be happy and joyful from the heart is a great gift, I feel. And I sort of see that it's partly my job to show people how I've come out from all that nonsense and started to come through in a healthy and a natural way, really.
Right.
Yeah, so the answer in short to your question is, as we grow, we become more tolerant, not of the people, but of our own emotional reactions to them.
Right. Right.
So this to me is, more than anything else, is becoming, I listen in almost to my body and my heart, and I can sort of sense where my energy is most of the time. Right. And if I can feel it moving away from center, the most important thing for me to do is take a step back, breathe in a certain way, bring in a positive emotion and recenter myself, and then carry on with what I've got to do. So it's a very, very simple technique, but most people are so completely unaware of what their body's trying to tell them. I was myself, I was like, I explained last night when we met, I explained that I was like a head on a stick, really. That all my life was just interaction. It was like just an audio visual thing. And I'd completely lost touch with my body and my heart and stuff like that.
Which I think what you mentioned now, that in the past, I think it's a perfect segue, Dr. Joe, for you to mention a little bit about, in your darkest moment, the story where you came from. I think for the audience out there, they will be really appreciate that, can understand your transformation. Yes.
Yeah. I was born 6 weeks premature. Right. I was born apparently with respiratory distress and problems with my lungs. I also have spinal deformities and also congenital hip problems as well. So I was born in that state. So consequently, my mum, right, was very close to me, and she kept me close to her. And as I grew, right, she nurtured me, really, and she was afraid to let me sort of go out and experience life for myself and stuff like that, So I was almost like fused with my mum, right? But over time, what tended to happen is, as my brothers and sisters would go and play out, because I was physically sort of not disabled as such, but not fully formed, let's put it that way. I would have to run everything past my mother. Right, in order to get permission of her to act. Okay, so I was conditioned in a way, and almost like very dependent on my mum's feelings and stuff like that, And then as the years went on and I started to grow, because I come from an Irish Roman Catholic family, there was a lot of sort of conditioning that went with that as well. And at 11 years of age, I was then sent off, because the eldest in the family, the eldest boy in the family, was sent off then to train to be a priest. Right. And that would have been 13 years of basically indoctrination into the Catholic faith.
Yeah.
But I was there for about 18 months, and I just missed my mother that much because I was so dependent on her, really. So in the end, she sent me dad, right, to get me out of this priesthood training seminary and to bring me back home as well, where I felt comfortable. And then from there, I was sent to what's called the Christian Brothers School then. And I completed my sort of early years academic there. But I was always afraid, Jazzy. I was always afraid. And the way that the Christian Brothers taught people was through fear,
Right.
you know. And if you didn't learn, they used to give us the strap on our hands and stuff like that, you know.
Right. Wow.
And I found that I couldn't think clearly in fear. So I didn't do very well in my early years in school because I couldn't think clearly,
Yes.
you know. But at the age of about, I would say about 14 or 15, I discovered something called alcohol, right?
Oh.
You know, so I'd be around with my friends and we'd all experiment with things, you know, and we found alcohol. And I found that when I drank alcohol, it released the fear in me. I could start to dance, I could start to play, I felt comfortable in the company of others. But the other thing that happened was I could think clearly as well. So it almost like opened me up to be able to think more clearly. Mm-hmm. And so I found that in order to fit in society and stuff, if I took a certain amount of drink, it gave me this point where it normalized me.
Right.
Okay. So then, from there then, I went from school then and I joined what's called in the UK, the National Health Service. Right. And I joined as what they call a biomedical scientist. Okay. And that means that I went through various disciplines like biochemistry, hematology, all sorts of different things. So I started to learn a lot about biomedicine and I loved it. Right. But I was still having to take drink in order to be in that. Is this making sense so far?
Yes,
okay.
Totally.
And so what happened was, because I loved the whole thing to do with health and medicine, I learned a lot. I took on board loads and loads of information and I became quite sort of good academically, right? But I was also good practically as well and I loved it. So I got promoted very quickly. And as I got promoted, the stress started to come in more and more. Right. I had to manage people in the laboratories. I had to do loads of administrative work and stuff like that. So what happened is, as the stress increased, the drinking increased as well. Right. And over the years, as the stress came on, the drink came on, and then the drink wasn't working then, so I had to take other substances as well. Mm-hmm. And so I took substances to get to sleep and substances almost to pep me up as well. Mm-hmm. So that's basically, the people will understand this, you know, that when stress comes in, to try and find some sort of stress relief, you know. Right. But then what happened is, I was married at the time. My wife used to say to me, "You're drinking too much," and stuff like that. And I would say to her, right, you've got you don't realise I'm stressed, but we're going on 3 holidays a year. We've got 2 cars, we've got a nice house and all this, you know, stop picking on me, you know. So my relationship with my wife started to suffer then as well, you know. Mm-hmm. Anyway, to cut a long story short, as the years went on, the drinking increased. I lost my job in the health service. I lost my wife and children, you know, I lost my driving license, I lost everything. And in the end, I lost my house and I ended up sleeping on a park bench, you know, and I became very ill. My liver was not well. I had all sorts of problems and stuff like that. And then I tried to kill myself because I couldn't handle it anymore, you know. I made 3 serious attempts to take my own life because my feeling at the time was, I don't know what's the matter with me, right? I've hurt so many people, I'm hurting myself, I'm useless, I might as well be dead, you know. And I made 3 serious attempts to take my own life and they didn't succeed, thank goodness, you know. And on the last attempt to kill myself, I took a whole load of tablets and it should have seen me off clearly, you know. But in that process, something happened to me in that process. It was almost, I can only describe it like, this is like using a religious term, that the peace that passeth all understanding descended upon me.
Absolutely. And
for the first time forever that I can remember, I felt completely and utterly at one with myself, peaceful. And I almost like got a voice said to me, son, you know, you actually signed up for this before you came here. You know, you picked this, right? You shouldn't have signed on the line if you can't take a joke, right? That's what I felt, you know. And I didn't understand at the time. This is only in reflection, I can see what happened. But it was almost as if I was told, you signed up for this, right? You had to go through all these experiences so that you can help other people who go through this as well. And we're going to show you, I don't know who where is, we are, you know, but it's almost like I get information that comes around me to help people, you know. You're going to show people one step at a time, right, how to overcome stress, how to overcome anxiety and depression naturally, you know. And that's basically my job now, Jazzy. It just feels like the correct thing to do, you know.
Right.
And what happened to me was I went to Alcoholics Anonymous. That's where they guided me back to myself, really, because my whole sort of vision was looking for solutions outside of myself. When they say in AA, and lots of people don't know that 12-step programs are not really about drink and drugs and stuff like that. They're about helping you to reconnect with your heart, you know. And when they used to tell me this, I think, what are they talking about, my heart and stuff? Because my head was still biochemical, you see. They showed me certain techniques and they showed me a few steps what to do, and something changed in me. It's almost like this opened up, you know. I don't know whether that's made sense.
Yes, totally.
But I can only explain it was a sort of energy change, and then I started to feel this sort of a flowing feeling, you know, and I realised I understand what that is now because I've studied neuroscience now, and it was almost a shift from electrical energy into like a magnetic energy, you know. And in yoga, for example, they'd call that prana. In Chinese medicine, they call it chi. Yes. Japanese is called ki. Yes. In other things it's called spirit, you know. Yes. So I don't put a label on it. To me now, I tend to go with a feeling rather than what my head tells me.
Right.
You know. Right. And my life's very simple now because I wake up in the morning and I just sort of go like this. Hello? You know, it's a sort of a connection now with my heart. And I just say, please show me what you'd like me to do today and give me clear information, and I'll try and act upon it, you know. And when I know that I'm not in my heart, I can almost feel it closing down and I start to become tense.
Right.
So when I get that feeling now, I take a step back, do a certain breathing technique, recenter myself in my heart, it opens up again, and then the information starts to flow through. That's the only way I can describe it, really.
Right.
I mean, I can put all sorts of neuroscientific terms on it,
yes.
But in simplicity, it's how do I feel? Am I open and flowing? And I say, if I'm open and flowing, I just keep going.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Joe, for that detailed description of your journey, and also there's so many like nuances there.
Yeah.
And you just emphasized on the feeling, and actually reminds me of a great book, also a very nice title. By Neville Goddard. It's called "Feeling is a Secret."
Right.
And it's also, last night when we were doing the talk, I also mentioned, I was thinking about when we're talking about emotions and thoughts, there's also quite a great book by David Hawkins. It's called "Letting Go."
Yeah.
And they're all great books. And however, come back when you said that to breathe in a certain way. So I'm wondering if we could just take maybe like 5 minutes or a few minutes to practice this and teach our audience out there how to breathe in a certain way so that they can more connect it with their heart. I think it will be very beneficial for, especially in a busy world. Now we're working from home, we're working from a computer all day, and in such busy life. Maybe if you could like guide us.
Of course, when I was doing my PhD,
totally.
I was looking at basically heart tracers on people in various psychological states. So people who'd be stressed, people who'd be relaxed and stuff like that. And what I found out was that the stuff I do is called heart rate variability analysis. Okay.
Is this the graph that 6 beats per minute, that one we saw last
That's
time?
right, yeah.
I would
and
put it here.
so what I was doing is I was measuring, so heart rate variability. When we measure our heart rates, people say, well, my heart rate's 70 beats per minute. You know, but that's really an average over a minute. Okay. What we do in heart rate variability is we take every single beat and we calculate the differences, the minute differences between one heartbeat and the next. And over time, generally about 5 minutes, we can take a 5-minute recording, right? You can analyze then how the nervous system is actually causing the way your heart to work. And then you can go backwards. It's a posh name. It's called auto-regressive transformation. You can take the graph, you know, and you can go backwards, and you can almost tell whether there's an accelerator working on your heart or a brake, because that's how it works, you know.
Right.
And then you can trace back then to different things in the body and stuff like that. So in stress, what tends to happen is both the brake and the accelerator go on together. So it's like driving a car, you see, right? If you drive a car when you're stressed, it's like this, it's very jerky and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally.
So that's basically the way the heart works, really. Okay, so what I found was that people who are breathing at different rates, it caused their heart, right, to send out a jaggedy pattern. Let's put it that way for people who don't understand. It's called incoherence.
Yes.
Okay, so what I found was that people who started to breathe more slowly and more deeply, more coherence came into the way that their heart was working. So rather than being jaggedy, right, it started to go in a smooth way.
Right.
So it's a bit like driving the car. The accelerator would go on, but then the brake would come in just to keep things smooth.
Totally.
And so when the brake and the accelerator are actually working in harmony with one another,
right,
what tends to happen is the mind opens up and we become more clear.
right,
So we're not looking to escape all the time. So people who are stressed are generally in what's called the fight and flight response,
right,
which is like most people in the world now.
yes,
And as the world gets quicker and quicker, more people are going into that.
yes,
They can't think as clearly. So in actual fact, they're more easy to control when like that as well. But that's another story for another day.
yeah.
So what I learned about myself was people who are breathing at 12 breaths per minute, they have a certain amount of heart rate coherence. But when we go from 12 to 9 breaths per minute, we have an increase in heart rate coherence. However, the magic comes when we breathe at 6 breaths per minute. Because what actually happens then is the brake and the accelerator, which represent the two sides of the autonomic nervous system, they start to work and cooperate with one another. So rather than fighting against each other, because like we talked last night,
Yes.
when we're in stress, our right and left brain start fighting with one another.
Totally.
So in order to get our right and the left brain working together, we do it from the heart.
Right.
So this is not introducing new thoughts like cognitive behavioral therapy. This is actually going back to the heart, changing the way the heart works through breathing in a particular way, which I'll show you in a second. It then sends more coherent information back to the brain. Our brain waves change. We go from what's called beta frantic state into what's called an alpha theta state.
Right.
And it's a state of relaxed alertness. It's not a state where people are falling asleep. It's a state where it almost like your mind becomes open like that, and more options come in. So you can choose more healthy options.
Right.
And the way you do it is, it's very, very simple, is we just put our hands on our heart like this, and then we put a bit of pressure there just to sort of, to bring us out of our heads into our heart. So we're focusing on the feeling now of a slight pressure. Now here's the trick now. We use our brain now to bring in a picture of something that brings with it a happy, joyful feeling, a feeling of care, a feeling of compassion. You can call this love if you like. Anything that brings in that feeling, okay? And then you can let go of the picture then, okay? And just stay with the feeling, okay? So the idea would be is allow your shoulders to relax. That's it. So the shoulders drop. Allow your jaw to relax. Just tilt your head slightly forward because you've just got your head a little bit back there. Allow your eyes to relax. Allow your nose to relax. And more important, that's good. More importantly than anything else, allow the root of your tongue in your throat to relax. And almost allow, that's it, good. Because I'll talk about the throat in a second. And now you've got that feeling of loveliness. I just want you to breathe that feeling all the way in, very, very slowly. And as you breathe out, just allow your shoulders to drop even further as you sink deeper and deeper into a nice state of relaxation. So it goes, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 5. All the way in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just keep doing that. And I'll explain, as you keep doing that, I'll just explain what's actually going on. So our breathing is associated with the braking system. And because most of us are in acceleration, It's the brake now that's actually regulating the way that the heart works. This is called through the vagal nerve or the vagus nerve. And what actually happens is, just allow your shoulders to drop as you breathe out. So I say, we breathe in the light, collect all the rubbish that's in us, and as we breathe out, we just give all that rubbish, if you like, back to the universe. So just allow your eyes and just your head's just gone back again. Just put your head forward slightly. That's it. Make sure that your throat is like an open channel. And just imagine now that your heart's opening. And as you breathe out now, you're actually breathing up through this open throat, through a channel right in the middle of your head, and out like a fountain through the crown of your head. So you're breathing in. And as you breathe out now, it's going up like a fountain. And this would be called, Yossi, this would be called being centered and being grounded. And it's best if you can do this. So if people are new to this, if they can practice this 3 10-minute sessions a day for 90 days. Now people will be saying, oh, I haven't got time to do that. This changed my life, and it took me such a long time to realize that it was actually changing. And this is to do with restructuring the nervous system in our head, or the nerves. It's called neural architecture. So we're actually creating new positive pathways based upon the energy that's coming from our heart. And when people do things like Tai Chi, as they move their arms upwards, they're breathing in. And as they move their arms downwards, they're breathing out. Now, do it again now, but this time, so that you can't hear your breathing.
Like this.
I can still hear you breathing. Hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's hard, you see, because most people, they actually close their throat, right? So let me show how most people do it. They go like this.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's really hard to let go of that because we've got so much tension behind our eyes, in our neck and shoulders, in our throats, right? Yeah. And we don't know this. And part of this is to help people to reconnect with the state that their body's already in. Because people think, oh, I'm fine, I don't feel anything. Once you start coming back to self-awareness, you start to realize, hang on, I've got tension here, I've got tension in my throat, I've got a bit of headache tension. So this is helping you to go back. When we do it, it should be like this. Now try and do it now, but let your eyes relax, sort of. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So as you do that, you've got to let go of all the tension in your head. And then if you get into it, then you can feel that your heart's filling. And then you can actually, when you get good at it, you can send it to the parts of your body that are in tension, and it almost clears that tension. And for anybody who's interested, Mantak Chia, you know, he gets hold of this smile. And it's a positive energy. It's like a releasing energy, right? It's a nurturing energy. It's associated with the sacred feminine, okay? And you can actually, when you get good at it, you can actually use your eyes, use your breathing, and you can actually direct it to where the pain is and almost like kick it out there.
Yes.
I didn't know any of this at all, right? My head was just full of medical knowledge, right? And I tried to apply all that I'd learned in medicine, and that was quite substantial.
Right.
Didn't work at all, you see.
Right.
Working at the wrong level. It was working at the level of knowledge. When we had to get into knowing, it's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
This is knowledge, this is wisdom. Okay.
Totally.
You know, and the more that we sink into this, the more, if you like, information we get of more subtle information.
Right.
And then we can act upon that then. You know,
Yes.
and I realize that people are also, they always want to get higher now and go higher. I would say go deeper, because in a paradoxical way, the deeper that we sink into ourselves, the higher we get in understanding, or the more expanded in consciousness. People call it, they used to call it extrasensory perception, but I would call it expanded sensory perception.
Right.
And how can you tell when you've hit another level of understanding? Because you feel super sensitive for a while. Because our radars start to extend out and we can feel very sensitive. That's just because we're a little bit intolerant to all the information that's coming in. So if you go back to that breathing, it plateaus out then, and we can then start to work at that level. Does that make sense? So this is extending our what we feel. It's basically feeling, you know.
Yes.
So we get back into, rather than being just audio visual, right? We start to become clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient. These are all the things, you know. And we talk about this in yoga. We call it the siddhi powers.
Yes.
But if people are doing this to try and get more power, that's a distraction as well. The idea would be to keep out of the way, let these things come in naturally, but keep sinking deeper and deeper and deeper.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Okay.
And also personally for me as well, I read there's a book called Autobiography of a Yogi,
Okay.
which is this gentleman, Paramahansa Yogananda, and
Oh, yes.
he traveled in India, in America, and especially in India, he met a lot of saints who had cities. And I read that quite early on in my spiritual journey, and I was like, wow, I want to be more spiritual because I want to have these cities. I want to be at two physical places at once, manifest material things out of my will, and make miracle happen. And however, that itself, like you said, is a distraction, and even that is like the ego wants control of things.
It does.
And
Wants to be famous, wants to be strong, wants to be able to attract a big car, a
Yes.
partner,
Yes.
a big yacht. In Barcelona, there's loads of yachts, you know. Right.
Totally.
I wanted that, of course I did.
Yes.
But I realised the more I was going for that, nothing was changing really. I was becoming more tense, more aggravated because things weren't happening, right?
Right.
And I have somebody who guides me. He said,
Right.
Joe, he said, that's all to do with ego. And I said, but it will help people. And he said, still, it's all to do with your ego.
Right.
He said, you'd be better breathing the ego away. So you don't get rid of ego, you just get rid of egomania. You know what I mean? And what egomania is, it wants to dig two disastrous pitfalls. Either it wants to rule everybody,
Right.
or it wants to be a recluse and not be around everybody.
Right.
The idea is, with the heart-centered breathing, it's called the middle way.
Yes.
And when the middle way when these two start to work together, this is when the gut, see, look, I've got a thing coming in now. I get feelings, you see, coming in.
Right.
Ooh. This is when the golden child is born.
Right.
Okay. And this is, you know, there's Chinese philosophy to talk about the golden child.
Yeah.
There's Tibetan stuff that comes in and there's
Yeah.
stuff, you know.
Yes.
But the golden child really is the re-emergence of your essential soul self, right? Now, these sound like religious words, but
Like alignment, essentially.
well, it's alignment, yeah. So as we are born, this is the way I look at things, is before we came here, right, we actually signed up, right? We signed like for a curriculum of the soul's experience.
Right.
I honestly feel that we can't change that.
Right.
The free will was when we were in our soul, right?
Yes.
And we signed up for a particular set of experiences within the human dimension. Okay, so we can't get away with that. And people say, well, what about free will choice? I think that the only free will choice we have are things like, would you like tea or coffee? I'll have coffee, please. So we can't, from the human dimension, we can't change the curriculum.
Right.
So whatever will be, will be. And once I accepted that there was a plan already in place for me, whether it was chosen by God or whether it was chosen by me in my soul, I set this up in order to experience for the soul's evolution, right? I don't know, does that make sense?
Yes.
So people want to change, you know, there's people out there who say now you can change this. That's not my experience. I'm coming up to about 33 years of practicing this now. Right. And I've tried to fight against it. I've tried to say, oh, this is not manifesting. There's not loads of money coming to me and all this stuff and all that. And that's because sometimes people misguide you into what's possible, really. Here's my sign of success is peace of mind.
Yes.
That's it. In any circumstances, generally speaking, I can be calm, cool, collected,
Right.
you know, and I feel good about myself.
Right. So, do you save money, Dr. Joe?
Do I save money? No. I've hardly got any money. People think because I'm a doctor that we have loads of money and stuff like that. But we live in a rented property, you know. I just sort of, I get provided with what I need on a daily basis, right?
Yes.
So if you like, there's almost like a guardian angel behind me, and it provides me with what I need, not necessarily what my ego wants.
Right.
And in all the time I've been practicing this, I've never been without money. I've never been without food. You know, we live in a nice rented property. I've got just an ordinary car and stuff like that. I don't really want anything more than that, you know, because every time I strive to get more and more things, all the stress and the tension comes back in.
Totally.
You know, so I have to trust that the Holy Spirit or my guardian angels or the extraterrestrials that are guiding me. It doesn't matter what these things are, right? They're just like intelligences working from different dimensions.
Yes.
I just say, if I've got any indecision, I'll say, look, I'm feeling a bit confused here. I'm not quite sure of the right thing to do. Will you just guide me, please? And then I close down then and get on with my day. And it's almost like information comes out of the blue.
Right.
As simple as turn left at the bottom of the road.
Right.
And then I'll turn left, bump into somebody I haven't seen for 5 years, and then the process carries on.
Right.
So rather than work on my intellect and my instinct, because that's what I worked on all my life, instinct and intellect.
Right, yes.
I just work with intuition now.
Right.
It's not something that's outside of myself. It's something that actually emerges from here.
Right.
It's hard to explain, really. You know, it's hard to put into words, but because it's a feeling.
Yes.
And for people who are watching this, how do they get into it? You put your hand on your heart like that, right? You bring in a happy feeling, one that feels opening, and you breathe it in, and you collect all the rubbish that's in there, and then you breathe it all out. So it's a cleansing process.
Totally. And Dr. Joe, I want to make a comment on what you just said when it comes to every time when you need something that's being provided, because growing up in Asia, that's I've been taught really by my parents, by my grandparents, is like, oh, you gotta work so hard, if there's a promotion, it's an opportunity, even if it brings you more stress, you take that because you gotta save money just in case if something happened, or just in case something happened to your parents or your family. However, looking back to the written, where the teaching of Lao Tzu, he said, other people want success, other people want to accumulate things. My mind is so empty and I want nothing and I own nothing. And he said, like, I'm like a fool. I'm like a leaves in the wind. Yeah. I have no direction, nowhere to go, no hurry. And that's like what you said, the middle way.
Yeah.
And it's like so interesting to see that, like, there are somebody in the world understand that probably about like 1,600 years ago.
Yeah.
However, now that it's like we're human, however we live our days like machines and we're not in tuned with our heart.
Yeah.
Which I think is very quite dangerous if we carry on to live like this, for each individual and also for the impact that when we're not in tune with our hearts, the impact or damage that the harm that we impose on other people.
Yeah, I agree totally. However, I think that you need to get to a position where you wake up through the stress and through the driving and stuff like that. So that's called egocentricity or self-centeredness. You know, most people are programmed by their parents for good intentions because maybe our mums and dads didn't understand it because they've been programmed in the same way, you know. So they pass the program on, but comes generations where the generation falls apart and thinks, right, they start to wake up to thinking something's not right here. And I think that that's what's happening across the planet now. As there's a great big shift going on in consciousness now. As we come out of one cycle and one age to another, okay? And people are falling apart at the seams because all their old ideas, their emotions, their attitudes, the very formative forces of their life aren't working anymore. Yeah. And that's all part of a bigger process that's going on.
Right.
So what I'm saying to your audience is, if you're really suffering and you're unhappy, and be honest about it, if life's not working for you, try this.
Right.
Because the key, right, to you going forward is not in here, it's in here, right? And when people used to say that to me, I'd think, oh, what are they talking about, right? And I had to get to a position where my intelligence, or no, not really intelligence, intellect, was smashed to pieces, right? Because I used to think I'm one of the cleverest persons alive.
Yes.
I can work this out, right? And I couldn't.
Right.
And that's why I say I had to metaphorically decapitate myself, take my head off, throw it away.
Right.
Because my sponsor said to me, Joe, he said, when I'm talking to you, all you say is, I know, I know, I know. And he said to me, it's clear to me that you know next to nothing. He said, because you've tried to kill yourself 3 times. So all your knowledge, everything that you've accumulated, right, is not worth a penny. And I thought, he's right. I was like a know-all knows nothing, you know what I mean? I call it a knowledgeable idiot, really.
Right.
And so this is intellect, because we're taught in the world, aren't we, especially in the Western world, no, the whole world now, that build knowledge, read, go to experts, listen to all this, that and the other, because that will be the key to your success. In my lived experiences, it isn't. That's the key to my downfall. But it's almost as if you have to get to that point to realize that you can have an opportunity to start again. And that's what I did. 33 years ago, I was given the opportunity to clean the sheet and to start from scratch. But this time being guided from here, not from here.
Right.
You know.
Totally. And perhaps that's what Socrates, he was being called the wisest man of his time. And he said, I only know that I know nothing.
Yeah, that's right. And I see that. I think that we're all just glimpsing, right? Again, here it comes again. Right.
Yeah.
See, I get this feeling, it's like something standing behind me going, well done, son. Well done, right?
Yeah. It's like a little goosebump.
Yeah, it's coming up from my legs, up my spine and out of the crown of my head, you know.
Yeah.
So that's like an indication of, this is good, this, Joe. Keep going, you're doing okay, you know.
Yeah, nice.
Because I don't know. People say to me, what's coming up next for you? No idea.
Yes.
Like I was saying last night, people were trying to get me to give them answers.
Right.
And all I could say to them was, I don't know what you need to do, but you already know.
Yes.
Because the solutions to all your problem, right, are in here, right? Because solution, it dissolves problems. You know, that's what a solution is. It dissolves problems, you know. Right. If you're a Christian person, it's almost like the Christ center would be the heart. So when you cast all your burdens on the Christ center, what I think that means is you take all your worries and concerns, you shove them in your heart. And if you were a Christian, you'd say, Jesus, please tell me what to do. And so the information would come that way. Yeah. But I think, you know, without getting into the religion and spirituality, I think Jesus was a symbol of the transformative power of the heart.
There are a lot of images of the heart, like the heart center, and it's glowing.
Yeah.
Like not only him, but other maybe Maria and I've seen them in churches.
Yeah. So I've dispensed with the religious sort of dogmas and stuff, and I try not to put labels on it, because once again once you get the feeling, if you can maintain the feeling, right, and sink deeper into it, it's almost like your heart opens further.
Totally.
And what I feel is, and what I'm being shown is, that there's actually an opportunity to get in contact with 12 different dimensions or intelligences that are residing already, waiting to be tapped into in every human being on the planet. Now, to go back to the Christian analogy, right, this would be Jesus and the 12 disciples, you know.
Right.
You know. But then we get into problems because people come in and say, well, why are they all men? What about the women? You know, and I think, so I tend not to do that. I tend just to go with feelings, you know. And sometimes if I'm having a problem with a practical thing, I can almost like say, can you please show me how best to go about this in a practical way? And it's almost like inspiration comes in to do with that, then I follow that then. Right. If it's a mathematical problem, this is aligned to something called Howard Gardner's theories of multiple intelligence. And he only got to 8. But I'm saying, and I know this, that there's 12, right? And I'm still trying to work out how to classify these, really.
Yeah.
So if any of your audience are interested in it, they look up Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences.
Yes.
He was onto it, but he tried to introduce spirituality. But the people in academia who he was working with said, "Oh, don't put that in there. That'll cause too much trouble." So he sort of bottled out before he got the full answer, in my view.
Yes, definitely.
I don't know whether he's still going, and he might get onto me, to cause trouble.
Oh, he's still working on that.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm working on the fact
Nice.
that he had 8 intelligences,
Right.
Almost like he had 8, but I think there's actually 12, right?
Okay.
And I think there's also, to bring women into this, there's masculine and feminine as well.
Yeah.
So almost like expands to 24 then.
Totally.
Yeah. I don't know. These are the things that come in, and I get the feeling of,
Yes.
okay, look further into that now
Yes.
and try and simplify it for people. Really.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. People think because I've got all these qualifications, right, that I know everything, and it couldn't be further from the truth.
Yes.
To go back to Socrates, and I like Plato as well. Plato's got more heart about him,
Yes.
To me, Plato was more heart-centered. Socrates was probably more head-centered intellectually.
Totally.
But I think Plato, with his nuances and his refined things about goodness, beauty, and truth, he talked about, and that's how I'm trying to live my life now.
Yes.
I'm definitely not a saint, and I'm not even working towards it, but I feel great.
That's amazing. And to comment on what you said there, like the 12 and 24, actually, that's in the I Ching, that what is those symbols that expanded beyond the yin and yang? I'm gonna drop like an image here. It's like 4 directions, and then they're like the diagonal, and then there's like more of the 12 and 24. It's always
see, there it comes again now. So this is where we're going beyond human mind, right?
Yeah.
So we go beyond yin and yang.
Yeah.
Because yoga means union,
yes,
but that's a union just to get the two sides, Ida and Pingala, cooperating with one another.
right.
But then we move out of the human mind then into these different dimensions. So I agree with you. So we move past those 12,
Yes.
right, into further expansions of consciousness.
Right.
And I think that's where we're going now, really.
Right.
And you can get there's loads of people doing drugs now, like psilocybin and mushrooms and DMT and all this sort of stuff, But they're, to me, they're chemical means to get a clue.
Yes.
But you have to get there naturally.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying that I haven't done all this stuff, because I have, right?
Yeah.
I've experimented with loads of different things, but in the end I got no Joe. You have to clean up your act now. See how toxic you are at all sorts of levels. Become aware of what you're eating, what you're drinking, the environment that you're in. Are you taking on board not toxicity? So clean, because there's an expression, cleanliness is next to godliness. Sounds a bit religious, that, but I'm starting to understand that. I have to be aware now of environments that I'm in.
Yeah.
I have to keep myself open and flowing and flushed out all the time.
Totally.
And I think when we're doing things like Tai Chi,
Right.
I was introduced to this energy, right, through Reiki, really.
Yes.
Because I mentioned last night at the talk, somebody said to me, "You want to try Reiki?" And on my head said at the time, "Oh, what a load of nonsense." And they said to me, "Listen, don't knock it till you've tried it."
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
So I had an hour's Reiki session, and I could feel all this stuff going on. I thought, whoa, that's a bit strange. So I looked deeper into it. I went to do training for Reiki, and over time I've become a so-called Reiki master, But to try and explain it, it's a bit like, it's like feeling like magnets,
Yes. Yes, the energy between the hands, right?
It is. Well, that comes, and in the end, you can feel it deeper and, further and further. And that subtle energy, that used to be called charismatic energy. Right. It's like a sort of an attractive force. So when I'm actually working on people, what I tend to say is, because I say to my heart, right, could be called like a little prayer. Yeah. I say, "Dear heart, please provide this person," right, if it's the correct thing to do, please provide this person with the energy and the healing energy that they need. Because if they come with a headache and I say, "Please give them energy in the area of their head," it mightn't be that completely, because everything's connected. Right. It could be the big toe that needs energy. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
So I have to ask the intelligence of the heart to direct the energy where it's required.
Right.
And totally. I don't need to work it out. I just go with what I feel, really. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. However, I think it's a perfect opportunity to wrap up, and then we get a coffee and get some food and film the second part of the chat.
Okay, glad
Awesome.
to. Thanks very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Cheers. Yes.
Okay.
Let's do this.